Anne here with the fourth and final video that I'm creating in response to sexual assault charges brought against Brett Kavanaugh. So I've kind of gone through this whole process of describing why I'm making the videos and what inspired it and what constitutes sexual assault and harassment and all that stuff. So this video is like the most exciting for me because this is like this is the empowering portion for anyone who's ever been a victim of sexual misconduct. And when I say misconduct, let me define that yet again. It's anything to do on a spectrum from the less egregious stuff like harassment and microaggressions and less severe things, which can be as severe as one huge incident, by the way, the cumulative effects of small things. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have rape and assault and really violent crimes. But it's still nonetheless on this spectrum. When you cross over into the non-consent zone and things start to get ugly and gross, that's the difference. And that's what I'm focusing on, are behaviors and attitudes that cross over into the area where now you're hurting someone and you're not being respectful of them as a person or their boundaries, and you're causing damage, emotional, psychological, physical damage to the other person. And you're doing things for your own benefit at their expense. So just to be clear of the definition of sexual misconduct. So what can you do if you've been victimized? And how do you protect yourself from it happening again? I'm not going so much into the how do you heal from it part, because that's a whole nother thing. But so this part is just like the first line of defense. What can you do to either prevent it from happening or how to respond when it does happen? So number one, first and foremost, be clear about your personal boundaries and have assertiveness. Because you can't control other people and what other people do. All you can control is yourself. And so if you get really clear about what you will and will not tolerate and what your boundaries are and how to be assertive when somebody crosses your boundaries, that's half the battle right there. Because a person can't do a lot of things to you if you don't let them. If you cut it off before it can even get that far. So, and this is, boundaries and assertiveness are two things that I have had to work on myself. One, because I grew up in a household where my boundaries were almost non-existent and frequently violated. So if you grow up in a dysfunctional environment when you're a kid, during your childhood, that puts you at an even more disadvantage and makes you even more vulnerable to sexual misconduct. So there's that to consider. And then also I'm socialized as a woman. So even if I would have had like the best upbringing ever, I'm still socialized as a woman, and I'm still operating in the bigger society, right? Where sexism and misogyny and all this stuff exists, and you're still gonna have to deal with it. So being socialized as a woman in general means that you're taught to be agreeable, cordial, cooperative, accommodating of others' feelings and wants and needs, at your own expense. So in other words, you put other people's feelings, needs, and wants and behaviors above your own. And that's something that's hard to become aware of, because it's almost like this ingrained, it's this internalized, unconscious behavior that you've just been taught since you were an infant, a small child. And so it just comes naturally and automatically to be the more submissive or subordinate person in a lot of situations. So boundaries and assertiveness. And I'm not talking aggression. I'm talking assertiveness. So I think I mentioned in the last video the show The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, where there's the scene in which Matt Lauer says to one of the mole women, "I'm always amazed at what women will do because they're afraid of being rude." So we, as victims and survivors of sexual misconduct, we have to stop being afraid of being rude or hurting someone's feelings or making them feel uncomfortable or awkward when they cross our boundaries. And that's another one I've had to work on, like, oh, I don't want to be rude or bitchy, or I'm trying to learn how to be try to value my boundaries and my feelings and my emotions and my safety more than someone else's, or at least at the same level. So don't be afraid of hurting somebody else's feelings or offending them, especially when they're not respecting your boundaries for whatever reason, whether it's intentional or unintentional, whether they're even aware that they're doing something inappropriate. It doesn't matter if they mean to or don't mean to. The behavior is the behavior that has crossed over into the danger zone. So it doesn't matter if it's intentional or the perpetrator isn't fully aware and it doesn't matter. So when it happens, somebody crosses over, somebody says or does something, and you find yourself in a situation where somebody has crossed your boundaries and crossed over into the sexual misconduct zone. So your first line of defense is to state your boundaries. That's the first line. That's the first thing you do. What else can you do? And by stating your boundaries, what I mean is verbally saying to the other person, I'm uncomfortable right now with what you're saying or what you're doing or this situation. I'm uncomfortable with this. Please excuse me. And that's it. You don't have to say anything more than that. You don't have to qualify it. You don't have to apologize for it. You don't have to go into details and explanations as to why you're uncomfortable. Short and sweet. I'm uncomfortable with this. Please excuse me. If somebody, or you can say, you're not respecting my boundaries right now. Please excuse me. I said no, and I mean it. Short and sweet. Oftentimes, most times, the other person is going to react by arguing or firing back at you, by defending themselves, by minimizing your feelings, by telling you you're overly whatever. Let them say or do whatever they're going to do. Don't engage. Don't engage in an argument with them, with this person, because they've already crossed over. They've already crossed over into the sexual misconduct zone. So don't engage it. Don't engage in an argument. Be bold enough to disengage and walk away. Even if they're in mid-sentence, walk away. Don't respond to if they start to get belligerent or name call or start to verbally assault you. Don't react to it. Don't respond to it. Disengage, walk away. And again, you don't owe them anything else. You don't owe them an explanation for why you're uncomfortable or why you're not interested. You don't owe them anything, and you don't need to justify yourself. You don't owe them an apology. You don't have to preface any of your statements with an apology, like, I'm sorry, but leave that part out. You don't apologize. Because again, you're concerned that you're making them uncomfortable or you're hurting their feelings or you're being rude. Fuck that. They've already crossed over. So they don't get that privilege anymore. Make it explicitly clear that you will not tolerate what this person is doing. Don't beat around the bush. Don't be ambiguous or apologetic or past that point. Make it explicitly clear, I'm not comfortable, excuse me. And so that way there is no misunderstanding. There's no ambiguity, no misunderstanding here. Like, we're done. All right? So if the person continues to try to engage you or fight with you or whatever, do not hesitate to tell them what you're going to do next. And I don't mean threaten them or call them names or that's... You just say, okay, you know what? I'm calling 911 right now. And do it. I'm going to call security right now. I'm going to walk over to that security guard or the bouncer or the bartender or that crowd of people right now and do it. If they've got you blocked somewhere, start yelling. Excuse me, this person is harassing me right now. Can somebody please help me? I've seen these whistles on backpacks now. Little plastic whistle things on the zippers. Blow a whistle. Take that thing out and blow it. I'm serious. Blow a whistle. It'll startle everyone. It'll bring attention to the situation. I mean, blow that thing. Video them with your smartphone. Like, you know what? Okay, you want to escalate this? Let me get some evidence of this right now. In case no one believes me when I report, because I am going to report this. Video it, record it, whatever. Take pictures. If you can manage it, live stream it. Once again, so there's no question as to what went down. It's not a he said, she said type of thing, because you got it recorded. You have evidence. Don't hesitate to escalate the situation if it starts to go that way. And have a plan for doing so, like practice it. I have apps installed on my phone now for like Uber and like, trying to live stream stuff and whatever apps. Okay, so I'm mid-40s. I don't know all this apps and smartphone stuff like younger folks do, but have your phone loaded and ready to go. Like, that's your weapon right there. So you're not just empty-handed. Like, you have resources at your disposal that you can use at any time. Also, the mistakes that I have made in the past, I haven't reported. Because I thought, well, what good is it going to do? It doesn't matter. Report. And the reason for reporting is because now you have evidence, you have a paper trail, documentation of what happened. Even if the police don't believe you, your supervisor, you report stuff to your supervisor, they don't believe you, or you report stuff to an establishment, the management of an establishment, whatever. It doesn't matter whether they believe you or not. It matters that you create a record of the incident. Because if it goes to a legal situation, you're going to need that documentation. So, report it officially. The police, your boss, they're not the judge and jury. So you don't need to prove anything to them. You just need to report it. If there is any kind of evidence like text messages, voicemails, pictures, videos, save that stuff. Don't delete it. I mean, block the person if you can, but don't delete the stuff that they send you. Take screenshots, back it up to the iCloud. That's evidence that can be and should be used against that person. Report and document. Because the more evidence you have, the more irrefutable you are. Plus, the more that people report, the more likely a person will eventually be caught. So if only a handful of people bother to report, but this person's been doing this stuff all their lives, they're not going to get punished. They're not going to be held accountable. So even if your report ends up going nowhere, it doesn't matter. It's still a record that something happened. If this person, if it goes further into the sexual misconduct zone, where it's really scary stuff starting to happen, sexual assault, stalking, harassment, domestic violence, like when it starts to get into the really scary zone here, the next line of defense are civil protection orders. And those aren't as hard to file as you might think. You don't need a lawyer to do it. It doesn't cost that much money. It takes some time, but it doesn't cost that much money. So there's no big financial barrier to doing so. And it is another layer of legal evidence and documentation. And civil protection orders, people go to jail for this stuff. So if the police didn't believe you the first time, they have no choice but to comply to a protection order, which is created by a judge. So there are several types of civil protection orders. These include anti-harassment, stalking, domestic violence, extreme risk, and sexual assault. These are for the less severe types of sexual abuse. And if you Google like your county and then civil protection orders, they're like where I live, the website is pretty clear and self-explanatory. Plus, there are advocacy groups, like there are domestic violence advocacy groups that will help you navigate the process of filing an order. So you're not just trying to do it all by yourself. And you don't have to pay for those services, by the way. And they can refer you to other resources like legal resources and counseling and support and all that. The next line of defense, file a criminal protection order, which one type is no contact and the other is a restraining order. Don't fuck around with people who engage in sexual assault and harassment. Do not tolerate it. And there are resources at your disposal. Don't hesitate to press charges. If you feel like there's going to be some sort of a backlash or whatever, get a protection order. And the advocacy groups will tell you what you need to do to prepare for any kind of a backlash, how you need to be on guard and what you need to have on your person at all times. And again, it doesn't matter if the protection order expires in a year and then everything blows over. The point is that you want to show the perpetrator you're not going to tolerate their behavior, and that you will escalate, and they will be held accountable if they continue that behavior. And going through the process of holding your boundaries and being assertive and escalating to the legal level is that you gain a sense of control and empowerment. And so you're less fearful and less likely to take shit. You become knowledgeable, you gain wisdom, you gain confidence, and you gain a sense of control and empowerment. You take that back from somebody who's tried to take it away from you. Another thing that you can do, warn people. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors, tell local businesses if this person is like in your community. Tell people, hey, this person did XYZ. Be on the watch. Find your voice and use it. Don't be afraid to speak up. Because if you don't, then these things are just going to continue to happen. And there are support groups for helping you so you don't have to suffer alone and in silence and be terrified. Yeah. The last little part, this video is getting really long. The last part that I wanted to address is, because this is just personal for me, but I know a lot of people experience this with the whole, online dating or just dating period. And this thing, it's called ghosting, where people just disappear. They take from you, usually they try to take sexually, and then they just disappear without a word. So I talked about this in my first video, where people try to conquest you or use, like, seduce or cajole or mask their true intent, and then they don't want to be held accountable for trying to get some free sex in exchange for nothing, and leading you on and whatever. So when somebody ghosts you, or that is so cowardly and disrespectful, and it is a form of sexual abuse, in my opinion, because again, you've manipulated. It's misconduct. So what I've learned is you're not going to get a reply from this person. They're not going to engage with you unless to, argue or defend themselves or whatever. State just like with your boundaries and your assertiveness. I don't think that there's anything wrong with sending someone a text and saying, you know what you did was really cowardly and really hurtful, and I don't appreciate it. You took advantage of me, and fuck you. You don't have to say the fuck you part, but just short, sweet, and name what they did, and that it was hurtful and that you don't appreciate it. And they probably will just delete it, or either respond belligerently or defensively or be angry, or however they respond. It doesn't even matter how they respond or if they don't. The fact is that you've communicated to them what you did was shitty, and I know it and you know it. Because trust me, when people are held accountable, when somebody calls you out on your shit, it gets in there. I mean, they might not feel guilty for it. They might continue to do it or whatever, but at least they know, like, I got some backlash on that. And yeah. I think I'm done here. I mean, 4 videos, that's enough for me. This is a huge topic that's really important, and it affects everyone. And I think that it's important for people to come forward and say, this is what's happening. It's happening a lot, and I've had enough. Like, shit's gotta change. Thank you.